we're going to be talking about the auditory system. And I would say this is one of the systems where we see a lot of problems for our children, especially if they are sensitive to auditory input. So the children that tend to be sensitive, they really struggle in noisy environments. So what they do is they hide, they cover their ears, they run away, they get really upset, they don't want to enter a room, lots of meltdowns. We also find that they get very bothered by, the noise of a Hoover or a truck or a motorbike driving past, or maybe the fire alarm, or it could just be the noise in the classroom, or when they go out and about, maybe in the supermarket, the swimming pools, and the hand dryers and the toilet. So there are lots and lots of things that can be really troubling for our children that's auditory sensitive. What also happens with our auditory sensitive children is they struggle to discriminate between these noises. So to them, everything is equally loud. So it might be that you are listening to the talk now, but outside somebody is cutting down a branch of a tree. And you can hear that, but you can cut that noise out because you're focusing on what I'm trying to tell you. But children that's auditory sensitive, to them, everything is equally loud and equally important, and they find it very difficult to cut any of those noises out. And they often get distracted by the tiniest of noise that other people don't even hear. So how can we help our children that's auditory sensitive? Now, of course, it is very difficult because we're in a noisy environment all the time. We can't take noise away. So what we need to try and do is find strategies to help our children to cope in certain settings. And one of the first things I want to recommend is using ear defenders. So they are readily available. And the idea with our ear defenders is that we use it when we need it. So it might be when you go out to a fire display, or when you are going to the shops, or out and about where you know it's going to be very noisy. Quite a lot of children benefit from using them in the school setting. For instance, if the classroom is quite noisy and they have to do focused work, if they wear the ear defenders, then that can take the distraction away. Really important again is we're not going to wear the ear defenders all the time because we have to expose our children to noise, so we only wear them when we need them. For other children, listening to music with headphones or earphones can work equally well because they can choose the music that they enjoy and then listen to that, and that will distract them from the noise that they can't cope with. When we think about the school setting, dinner halls, that can be the most noisiest place ever. So it really helps if children are allowed to maybe go outside into a different room with a small group of children and have their lunch in a sort of quieter environment. The same applies to when they have assembly. So maybe sit on the side of the row so that if they need to leave the room, then they can go. Now, another really good strategy and something important to keep in mind is when we take our children to a party or any social event, we need to make sure that we always arrive first, so that when we arrive, it's still nice and quiet. And then as the noise increases with other people turning up and arriving, then our children adapt to the noise as it increases. And it might be that they will get to that point where it's too much and they'll say, we have to leave, or I can't cope, or I'm going to go into another room. But at least we've given them the chance, compared to when we arrive at a party and it's already in full swing, and then our children will just go to the door and they will refuse to go in because they can't cope with all of the noise in one go. Another thing that we can do is thinking about the toilets, the hand dryers in the toilets. Now, for some children, that's a big problem. I had a mum in one of my talks who said she made out-of-order signs, which she laminated, and every time she goes into the toilets areas, she just sticks that on the dryers, and then nobody uses the dryers in the time that they're in there. And then when she goes out, she just takes it with her. So that's an option. But of course, something else to consider is maybe using a radar key for the disabled toilet facility. When we're out and about, by the time our children say that they need the toilet, they've already experienced quite a lot of sensory input. So it might be that this is just the last straw if they have to go into the toilets and listen to those hand dryers. So the radar key for the disabled toilet is the same key for all the doors, and they are available in all the libraries in North Somerset. Online, they are available to purchase. Lots and lots of websites sell them. They are very cheap. So it's a good idea to have that as an option so that you can use it when you need it. Again, if we go back into the classroom setting, when it's very noisy, it might be a good idea to let the child maybe work in a quiet area, either outside the class or even maybe work with a little workstation at the side of the class, so where the noise is a little bit more reduced. So now we find that some children are actually under-responsive to sound, and they react in a different way. So they often don't respond when we call their name. Now, I know most of our children don't listen to us when we call their name, but this is to the extreme. So it might be that the teacher gives an instruction and this child just doesn't react because they don't feel that it applies to them. They struggle to discriminate between different noises. So everything sounds very similar to them. They tend to talk in a really loud voice, and when you ask them to talk a little bit softer, they'll try, and then the volume just goes back up again. They also tend to make a lot of noise. So it might be humming noises or clicking noises with their tongue, or they might be singing. And more often than not, they're not aware of doing that. So it just happens that they make these noises. Now again, if we think back about our sensory sensitive children, auditory sensitive children, they also make a lot of noise. And the reason they do that is to cut out all the other noises that they can't cope with. So sometimes staff would say to me, how can you say this child is auditory sensitive if they are so noisy? But it's because it's their own noise, so they can cope with that. So when we think about our under-responsive children, they tend to make a lot of noise themselves, and they are not aware of it. And that often can be quite distracting for other people in class or other family members when they are constantly making these noises. They also struggle to follow instructions. They often need repetition of instructions and tasks being broken down into smaller steps. So when we try and get our children's attention when they are under-responsive, it might be that you could use a little bell, or you could call a child's name, or you can tap them on the shoulder. Now remember, we're not going to tap a child on the shoulder if they are tactile sensitive, but that would be one of the options to gain a child's attention. It could also be that when we give them any instructions, we make sure that we break the tasks down into small steps. So simple instructions, one at a time. We could always ask our children to repeat the instruction back to us as well, because then we'll know whether they've actually understood what we are saying. They tend to also benefit from sitting at a workstation or have a pop-up tent or something, or a desk screen on their table to help them to reduce any distractions. We also can help them in the sense with the making noises is by recording them and then play it back to them so that they can hear what they actually sound like. Because sometimes the children are really surprised about what they sound like all the time. And some teachers have strategies where they might just show a little card to the child in class to make them aware of the noises they are making. Or it could be that they could just put a little place on the card on the table in front of them, and hopefully that will help them to reduce the noise of what they are making. Parents have said that sometimes they use that strategy at home as well, because as soon as the children are aware, it's much easier for them to limit the amount of the noise that they make.